Good afternoon, sisters. This is my live. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me. Um, Today, I wanted to discuss um, acceptance. Right? As a student of psychology and a student of Black Studies, I have learned to combine the two to begin to understand my life. As a student of spirituality, um, my faith in God, I have also combined with the psychology and the Black Studies to come out with a mind of wisdom that not only helps me, but those who I have conversations with. And I challenge the higher ed system, because of my understanding of these things. One of my professors told me back when I first started at UIC, my first semester of Black Studies classes, it was Professor Jahari Jabir, and he said to me, he says, Yvonne, don't lose your experiences trying to obtain knowledge. He says that many times when older adults go back to school, we tend to leave our own personal experiences outside of the classroom because we think that what we've learned throughout our life is different from what they're going to teach you in the classroom. And I argue that it is the same thing. It's a different language, but it is still the same thing. Our experiences are our own. They are unique. They are individual to who we are and individual to our purpose in life and the struggles that we go through. Or should I say the trials, right? I like trials better. The trials that we go through to get us to the next point or step in our lives. And so when we realize that those trials keep us in one particular spot where you see no growth, you see no growth in your mindset, you see no growth in your life, right? Your finances, where you live, how you talk to people, how you love your family. If there's no growth, then you're still in the same spot, right? And we call those curses. We're not able to recognize them initially because we're in it. And so the idea of psychology is to get you to step back from being in a situation so that you can observe the situation, so that you can learn from the situation. And when we do that, that means that we're bringing our consciousness, our mindfulness to the front of what the issue or the problem is that we're facing. And so when we begin to look at how to respond to these things, is usually what we know because of what we were taught in the world. And I argue with this daily with myself. How should you show up to respond to a situation that you feel negative about? Because we are comfortable with showing our emotions when we're happy, when it's a celebration, when a new birth, a wedding. We know how to show up for these things, but we don't know how to show up when we're angry, when we're frustrated, when we're sad, when we're depressed about a situation, right? And the ability to stop yourself in that moment and show up and say, what is this moment trying to teach me? If I don't agree with the moment, what can I do to change it? And so these are the questions that I began to sit with through this journey of learning about psychology, Black Studies, and the church, right? The spirituality, the connectedness. I'm not talking about religion, because religion is something totally different. And so when I began to connect all of these things, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, right? To say, wow, Yvonne, you sat in church for 22 years. You've been on this earth for 47 years. But spiritually, you're only 5, right? And I say I'm 5 because that's when I began this journey to understand my purpose. My purpose was given to me when I was crying about my marriage. I was crying about how everything was broken, nothing was right, um, being sorry for what I did, but being angry that I had to do what I did, and so just not really fully accepting, right, my past. And my past showed up in my future. And when my past showed up in my future, I didn't know how to handle it, right? It caused me some great anxiety. It caused me some depression. It caused me to be sad, and I went into a prayer fast with some other sister friends of mine, and what happened was, I was praying for my marriage to be, reconciled. I was praying for, that my husband would return, and we would be happy and everything would be great. That's what I was praying for. But in the midst of me praying, I kind of issued a ultimatum or altruism to what I was actually asking for. I said, well, God, if you won't restore my marriage, right, that you said I could have, I'll work for your people. And so the idea of working for God's people, I thought was just in the church, amongst, other fellow believers. But as I ended my fast and prayer, we did it for the entire month of October. When I ended it, one day I began to just read and be present, right, in the moment. And what I saw was our communities dying, our communities suffering, our children angry and hurt and killing one another. Love for no black men, love for no black women, love for just people, period. That's what I saw. And it touched me in such a way that I began to weep. And I said, well, okay, while I'm waiting on the reconciliation, right, God, what do I do with this? Because I said to God, I was like, well, my kids are fine. Yeah, I'm seeing this violence out here with these other kids, but my kid's cool. I think I did a pretty good job. And God said, well, yeah, Yvonne, you did. You really did. You did a great job. But your kids still have to deal with the kids that's outside hurting. Your kids have to still deal with the community that's hurting from the violence. And so I said, okay, well, what you need me to do? And I didn't get an answer back right away, right? And so because I didn't get an answer back right away, I started thinking, like we always do. I was like, okay, well, he gave me something. Let me try and figure out what it is that I have to do. And so I began to think, right, personally, what would make life here better, for youth. And so I was like, well, I can create a program, and I could do this, I could do that. And so I did. I started looking at ways to help, right? And what helped me, during some of the many struggles and trials, I keep saying struggles, the many trials in my life, what helped me was that I told someone a problem or a situation that I was having, and 9 times out of 10 they were able to help. Or if they weren't able to help, they were able to point me in the right direction. And so I said, well, I know about being homeless, I know about being hungry, I know about all these different things. I even did therapy, as a teenager. And so I was like, well, all these things are great. These are great resources. Let's start there. And so I was like, what type of person does this type of work? And the answer was a social worker, right? And so I live in CHA housing. And because I live in CHA housing, there's a program. They partner with Heartland Alliance, which is a nonprofit based group who seeks to end poverty, and many other social injustices. And so they had an education, I don't know, like an education counselor, um, for CHA residents to talk to if they're considering returning back to school, because that's something that was on the table, right? And so we sat down. I set the appointment. It was only for an hour, and we sat there talking about what I did. Right? I talked to him about me praying and fasting for 31 days. I talked about, my marriage. I talked about my kids. I talked about me being homeless. I talked about not having food to eat. I talked about all these different things, right? So it was personal testimonies. And in that moment, I was being vulnerable. And so what happened from that conversation is that the program education, the education person, I know I just had the right answer. Anyway, his name was Corey Brown. And Corey Brown and I talked, and he began to share with me his story. And so I looked at, as I was listening to his story, I was like, wow, that's amazing. You were able to pull yourself up, out of poverty and go on to be in a space like this, right? I think he has a master's or doctoral degree. And so I was really, really inspired, by his story. He was inspired by my story, and I was inspired by his story. And so we began to dive a little deeper, right? He went further in within me because he, unbeknownst to me, went to school for psychology. And he, like me, began to he understood, I didn't at the time, he understood, right, the lives that we live, and how psychology, political, spirituality, how it's all connected to Black life. And so he said to me, he dove a little deeper, and he said to me, he says, Yvonne, social worker, you do a lot of paperwork, right? He says, it sounds like you want to really, really help people, get to the root of what the problem is. And so I was like, yeah, right? I was like, that's what I want to do. And so he says, well, you might want to try psychology. And so I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. No paperwork. But that was a lie. There's a lot of paperwork in psychology too. But the journey that he put me on, when I looked at psychology asks why. Right? Social work asks why too. Why, also, giving resources and, fighting the social justice, right? And so that's great work. That's really, really great work. And so I understood that that was a part of me, being a social worker. But then the other part too was the psychology, right? Because I've been in the social worker field, right? Because I use the services. And so I said, I want to get beyond just giving people services, right? So how do we begin to move out of that? And so psychology asks you why you're going through something, right? To get you to think and rethink and rethink and rethink, right? And so when we keep rethinking, that's growth, right? That's you stretching to understand something different from what you currently think in this moment, right? And so I'm gonna try not to say right a lot, because I do, because I'm really feeling the passion now. So what happens is, in psychology, is that we begin to ask the why. Why was I homeless? Why was it hard for me to get a job? Why was it hard for me to get a job that could help me take care of my family? Why was it the reason why I was depressed? So I began to ask these why questions. And so as I was taking this journey of psychology, I said, well, I've always been interested in Black studies, because I took my first African American history class in high school. And so right after, I got done talking to Corey, and Corey talked me into, or suggested, right, psychology. And he called me Dr. Livingston, and, he puffed me up. And I went on this journey. I entered it in junior college. I had already previously taken some classes because I thought I wanted to be an educator and teach in the public school system. I'm going to pause on that story because now I understand something different too, even about our education system. So I got some credits, and so I go to re-enroll in school. CHA paid for it, right? That's one of the great things that that's offered to CHA residents. And again, I'll pause on further giving more details about CHA because that's a whole nother story. So I went back to school. CHA paid for it. My books, the tuition, and so the refund money that I got back, I used that for my kids that were still in college and getting ready to go to college. So that money, I had to circulate within our family. So I'm in class, and I look for a Black Studies class because that's what I need, right? To feel connected to this journey that I'm about to embark on. Because when I took an Afro Studies class, African American history class in high school, that's how I connected with the political fight of, understanding the civil rights movements, because, it wasn't taught to me. So, and then that's another story, why it wasn't taught to me, that I'll get to one day. So the interest of Black studies was great, right? So because I can pick my classes, and I like to pick stuff that I'm interested in, not what the what some folks call advisors, tell you to get and pick. So I chose a Black Studies class while I was at Harold Washington, and Professor Danielle Williams at Harold Washington, I did my Black literature as African American lit, and there was another class, but anyway, the classes talked about, it introduced me to Black authors, right, and how Black authors use their talents and their gifts to fight oppression. See, because everybody has a role to play, right? And you have to understand how you need to play your role. And so when I looked at these writers and the writings that they did, and it was poetry, but they were talking about racism. They were talking about lynchings. So all of the Black experiences that was within their time, they use their art for writing and for doing poetry to tell a story. And so I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I took that, right? Because the psychology of it says that when we tell stories, that's how people connect with us, right? So I took that with me. So follow along with me as I tell you about psychology from my perspective. So the next class I took talked about, she focused on the prison industrial complex, which is the prison to pipeline, which is the over policing of Black communities, which is, which goes back to slavery and owning property and land and businesses and stuff like that. That's a whole nother story. So she introduced me to, what that looked like. I understood what that looked like from my own personal experience with it. My uncle went to prison, and then my own kid, he wasn't then at the time, but I understand it now, right? That when you have generational curses, it shows up again, right? Hang in with me. So I began to take that in too as well and add that to my personal experiences. And so there was this one professor in a speech class that I took, Professor Judd Rankin, and he was really, I felt like he was really anal, when I first met him, and we were having conversations, in class, and I was trying to keep up because he had me using words that I had never used before, and making us, look up the definition and, making a sentence out of it. And I'm very grateful that he did, because these are the words that I kept seeing a lot of. Hegemony, right? Is one that really, really sticks with me, because it tells the picture of my life. So hang in with me on that word. And so as I took his class, it was a speech class. And so we had to pick topics that was of interest to us, do the research on it, and then present it to the class. Well, in keeping with what I wanted to learn on this journey, I chose to talk about Black Americans, Black African Americans, right? And the struggles that we've gone through in this country. And so my first speech, I talked about the foods that we eat, right? What we think is I don't know, some people say it's changed over the years, right? From the cultures of the different foods that we ate, because Africans, when they came over, they brought sweet potatoes, okra, and then they also learned from the Native Americans on some, on produce. And so I talked about the story through that narrative, right? Through food, because I like to cook and bake. So I'm still keeping on with this journey, and I'm still on track to the end goal, right? Which is to help my community. So in every class that I've taken because it's a track to help my community. So one day we had a conversation, because he said, Yvonne, you what you present, how you talk, it's great, it's fantastic. Got an A out of his class, and it was kind of hard for me. But when I started spending time with him and talking to him, he was very knowledgeable about the Black experience, because he studied from Black people. And so I was like, wow, right? You're really knowledgeable, And so one day we had a conversation, and I was telling him how, I was giving him a piece of me. I was being vulnerable in that moment. And I told him about the 6 kids that I had, and the struggles that I went through, and look, I'm in school. I'm about to be better, and my kids are going to be better, and, and along the way, I'm going to pull my community. So he says to me, well, and then I followed up with, if I can do it, everybody else can too, right? Because I come from nothing, right? I come from nothing. And so he paused and he looked at me. So he says, Yvonne, he said, are you commenting to say that, that Black people should put their boots on and strap them up and go? And I was like, yeah, put your boots on. Come on, let's go. And he said, well, how are you going to put your boots on when you don't have boots? So I was like, you got boots, right? Your boots is your mind. Your boots is your movement, to want to do better for yourself. And he says that a lot of people don't even have that, right? He began to teach me and explain to me about my life and why it was a struggle for me. So I was like, yeah, now since you put it that way, right, that's exactly what this is. I don't have no boots. I didn't have boots. My mama didn't have boots. My grandma didn't have boots. My great grandmama didn't have boots. And probably more than likely, because my great grandmother shared with the family she was born on a plantation, more than likely her parents and parents were slaves. So I was like, wow, okay, I have no boots, but here I am. I'm doing this work, right? And so it challenged me to think differently, to change a perspective that I kind of ran with for, my entire life, because I wasn't taught the struggles, the black trials, right? I wasn't taught that. And so my sense of entitlement came down a little bit. And as I was on this journey, my kids were also on this journey. And so what they were learning, they were giving to me, right? And let me back up. They went to college before I did, right? Because I didn't go back until after I had started having some kids, and I only took a class or two. So they had, I think my oldest, Clarence, had graduated already, and Amanda, right? Because I didn't go back to school to 2016, and Amanda was done in 2016, and Clarence was done in 2015. So they were already chipping away at me and caused a whole lot of chaos in my house, because they were challenging how I was thinking, because they had went to school and learned differently, right? I had some understanding, but their understanding was deeper than mine. And so they were pushing back at me. They were pushing. And I would run. So I'm like, y'all some hateful kids. I've done this for y'all. I've done this. And they were like, yeah, thank you. But over here, you wrong. Thank you for this. But this over here, yeah, no, you wrong. We need an apology. And I wasn't about to apologize for what? Because I was not able to see that the hurt that I was causing them, they called me out on it. My kids called me out on it. And so they kept saying it. And so eventually I heard and I listened as I began my journey through college and understanding, right, the nuances of our ancestral history, how it shows up in our present. Because it's already part of the past, but when we don't learn from it, it shows up again, right? In the church, we call those generational curses. And so stuff kept showing up. And I was like, from my past to my kids' future, they like, well, wait, I don't want this. Ma, you can have this. Take this back. I don't want this. And I'm like, no, it's good. Take it. And like, no, it's not. Because they had learned different. So it's this constant push and pull in my house. But as I began to learn that what they were telling me and sharing with me was right, it was correct. And so I stopped pushing back and started to help educate me. I took what they learned and what I was learning in the classroom, right? Because I was sharing the classroom stuff my kids said, trying not to be the old mom, trying to be the cool mom, or just a cool older student. I took what they said into the classroom. And what the professor said to me at that point, right, because now I'm at UIC, he says, Yvonne, don't lose your experiences trying to obtain knowledge. And so I began to apply my experiences to what I was learning in the classroom, right? And at first, what I was learning, it challenged my beliefs, it challenged my faith. And so I was like, okay, well, yeah, church not what it used to be, right? Because when you look at in Black history, they teach you about the politics, right? And who, because politics is what governs your life, right? Politics is what enslaved Black people. Politics is what created Jim Crow laws, peonage, sharecropping, poll taxes. Politics is what did that. Church taught us, right, the love of God. Church taught us, about the struggles and the different prophets that came from the era and the time, right? So I began to say, how come church is not talking about politics anymore? Because if we understand that God is a part of our lives, then we'll also understand that politics is a part of your life, and the two go together. So I was like, yeah, because that's how we got Martin Luther King. That's how we got Malcolm X. That's how we got Rosa Parks and, all these other, Mark Delaney, all these other historical Black figures that fought for us to be free. It came from the church. It came from an understanding that one human to another human, you're not supposed to treat like this. We understood that. And so, because we understand that, all we're asking for, Black people, all we're asking for is to be treated like another human being, right? That's another whole topic and subject. So I'm trying to stay on task here. So as we begin, as I began to understand, the politics and the church and how our leaders came from this entity, right? This connectedness to spirituality. I can see, right, politicians saying, well, yeah, we can't have no more of that, right? So let's kind of limit what churches can preach about at church. Now, maybe it's just a theory, I don't know. But how else can we explain generations not being able to connect with the political movement of what surrounds them if we spend a lot of our time at church? So that's how I understand that the two go together. Everybody don't agree with that, and that's fine, right? Because we all do what's best for us. But the only thing I'm doing now is putting the information out to be more critical about your life. So I'm understanding all these things, and I got all these questions now, right? And so God began to answer me. So I was like, okay, wow. So Yvonne, this is the healing that you need to do. You need to be vulnerable. You need to testify. You need to share what it is that you're learning. Give it away. And so I'm looking, I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Free. Freely I gave it to you. Freely you shall give it out. And when I say that God gave it freely, I said at the beginning of this journey, I said, well, if you want me to do this work, it's got to be free. I see my kids in debt from going to college. I see this. And it's a lot of money. I'm in debt because I took out loans for my kids to go. And so I said, well, if we, if this is the route you want to go, make it free. So when I say that I am a senior now at UIC and the Honors College with a 3.6 GPA, and I have not paid for any of it. I was always short, you get the Pell Grant, and it's the MAP grant, which is free money. You don't have to pay it back. But I was always short maybe $3,000 or $4,000. When I say I have not had to pay for anything, 2 semesters, so an entire year, the Honors College gave me the tuition fee waiver, which waived my tuition. I don't stay on campus, so it was a nice, considerable amount of money that was turned to me. And again, what did I do with that money? I gave it to my kids because they were in school. So we're keeping this money within, right? And so that's how I began to understand the economics of keeping money within your community. Your first community is your family. So using that money to help circulate so that everybody around me, within proximity, within my personal space, is able to benefit from the gift of freedom that I was receiving. Free money. And so as I began to talk more about my life, give my own personal testimonies in relation to what I was understanding in the classroom, it was freeing. So I started saying, well, Yvonne, you're getting free. You're getting free. It's amazing. Freedom comes with a burden, though, right? Because then you begin to understand what's around you. You begin to understand the position of your role and your purpose. And while I'm happy that my purpose was revealed to me, I'm also sad because of the amount of work I have to do, right? And I get to feel that, and I accept that, right? Because I understand that any leader that stepped out in the front to see the work that needs to be done, it is burdensome. But then that's when you lean into, right, your spirituality. You lean into God so that you can begin to do this work. And I look at our brother Jesus, right, that did this work. He's a perfect example of the work that we need to do and how to do it. And how to do the work is you challenge yourself. That was all of the parables that Jesus talked about, all of the teachings and the spiritual meanings for the earthly messages was all training. Right? It's your foundation. And no matter your spirituality, right, or what religion you believe in, right, I just need you to connect to the spirit within, right? And you know when you have a Holy Spirit, right? Holy meaning pure, that it does not want to harm you or others. It's a sacred act of loving one another. More on that later. So I'm taking myself on this journey. I'm talking, I'm understanding, all things around me. And so it emits the wisdom of a 5-year-old spirit. Even if you're 1 in the spiritual, you're wiser than the physical, right? So I'm 5 spiritually. I started this journey back in 2015. My birth month anniversary is coming up. I'm going to celebrate every day from October 1st to October 31st because it's a day of celebration for me. I'm 5 spiritually. In the natural, I'm 47. So for 42 years, right? I was just existing as a human. I would occasionally have spiritual moments. But now I understand that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. So that's how I'm able to rise above my human emotions. Do they challenge me? Do they make me feel some type of way still? They do. But what I will not allow my emotions to do is to hurt me or others. And what I mean by that, and how I do that work, is it when I feel that emotion, all of the negative emotions that I was speaking of earlier, I sit with it. I sit with sadness. I sit with anger. I sit with frustration. And I talk with it, right? I say, why are you angry? Because this was taught to me by another sister. I joined her lives for Black women, right? Giving us space to talk, just like I'm talking to you right now, giving us space to talk about what it was that we were going through during this George Floyd moment, through the Breonna Taylor moment, through all of the others, right? All the moments of racial tension that this world created. And so in that moment, I share with her, because I want to explain what this is, how you identify and sit with your emotions, your negative emotions. So the reason I'm here, I'm in Texas, I'm in Dallas, Texas, I'm with my sister, because she has cancer, stage 4. And when I first got here, I was like, okay, wow, what am I going to do? What does she need me to do? Does she even want me here? How long does she want me here? So these were all the questions that was going on in my head. I talked about every last one with my sister. Now, was that hard to do? Absolutely. The feeling of not wanting, if somebody doesn't want you to be somewhere, right? Even if you do have good intentions. I didn't talk to her about coming. She asked for our other sister. And so I was like, well, if you're going, I'm going. Because this is her second bout with cancer. This is round 2. So the first round, we all came. We all came this time. But the last time when my other sister, Jasmine, when she was here, she had stayed longer. I had commitments back at home. So this time around, I say, well, I don't have as much commitment as I did before. So I'm gonna come and be here, help, like Jay-Z did last time. But I did it wrong. And so because I did it wrong, I had the feelings of maybe she don't want me here because she didn't reach out to me. She reached out to Jazzy. And so I talked to Jazzy about it first, and she was like, no, she cool. But I still felt uneasy because I didn't go to the source. And so when I went to the source, when I talked with my sister about my feelings of her having stage 4 cancer, me being here to help her, what we had to do to help her, and what she shared with me was a story of her going through the cancer and how they found out about the cancer and how long she had to wait for the diagnosis and how the waiting landed to stage 4. And that's a whole nother topic too, about medical, the healthcare field, and Black women. So she was like, no, I'm glad y'all came. I'm glad that you're here because, I understand that I need to ask for help when I need it. She said that. And it's something that I struggle with too. And I don't know if you all struggle with that, but, because it was taught to us, and it's a good quality to have, right? To be self-sufficient, but not so self-sufficient that you take on more than what you can bear and you can't ask for help when you need it. That's why we're here, to help one another, to love one another. And so when she said that, I was able to connect with that because, yeah, I do that too. When I had my scare, when they found a lump in my breast, my initial thought was, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm going to keep this to myself. And both of it, and that was wrong, right? But that was something that I had to sit with before I finally decided to tell my family, right? It's benign, right? I don't have cancer. But I said that just to say that as Black women, it's okay for us to share. It's okay for us to share this burden. It's okay to let go of the unknown and embrace the known, right? Embrace the anger, embrace the frustration, right? Sit with it, talk to it. And so what she did, the therapist, I'm back to this therapist story. What she did was she asked us to focus on what we were feeling in that moment. And to, because she asked us about our pain, right? And she told us to embrace it. Instead of pushing it away, she said, embrace the pain. And at first I was like, why would I want to embrace frustration? What purpose does it give me to embrace frustration? And so what happened though when I did, I began to understand why I was frustrated. I was frustrated because my sister has cancer. I was frustrated that when she shared with me, when I asked her those questions, she shared with me why it took so long for them to diagnose her, because they didn't listen to her. Like, she doesn't know her own body. Like, she doesn't feel different on the inside. And so I was like, wow, right? So then I began to identify, like, I'm frustrated with the healthcare system. I'm frustrated that doctors continue to fail, not just, because they fail other patients, they do, but they fail Black women. And as I cried, because it made me cry. As I cried about my frustration, and I got a moment to talk and to share with those sisters that was on that call about what was happening with my sister. And the words of encouragement that I received was so uplifting and so empowering that I came downstairs and talked with my two sisters here about the healthcare system and how it failed us. It failed Tanisha with cancer. It failed Jasmine with, it's so much stuff I can't even list it all. It failed me because I've been living with a disability for the past 13 years. Has it been longer than that? 14 years. And I wasn't believed, when I was talking about my pain. So she said, after we identified, the emotions that we were feeling in that moment, that it had a destination, right? And so when my frustration and anger at the healthcare system, I say, well, the next course of action for me is, what can I do about it? Because sitting in Black studies classes, and learning of the struggles that Black people had to deal with and how they fought back. They've always fought back. Nobody wants to be enslaved, right? And so now, since I don't want to be enslaved, I fight back. So I joined a women's health initiative group at UIC. I'm probably going to join some other stuff. I share articles. I talk about my own personal experiences. This is how you educate, and this is how you show up, and this is how you fight. Use your voice. Right? If you don't have the mind and the time to join an organization and, let your voice be with theirs, right? That community. You can also use your own testimonies, your own personal stories about what you went through. And I like to call it testimonies and personal stories, because it's personal to you. And that's what we get when we show up for ourselves, right? It's you, and you. And this is how you begin to grow and stretch, by challenging yourself, by showing up, right? If somebody else was having an experience that's negative or positive, because we easily share the positive stories. It's easy. It's a no-brainer. But the more difficult and challenging stories that we don't want anybody to know of our own personal mistakes, because you just think that they're just so horrible, nobody else has ever experienced what I experienced. And I can absolutely tell you without a shadow of a doubt that you are not alone. Everything that I've experienced in my life, I have somebody else to connect to right here in the physical, and now I have connections with the past. And then having these people show me how to do this work. And that's what I do. That's how I show up. I said I was nervous about, sitting here doing this talk, but I'm doing it anyway. That's what Harriet did. Harriet Tubman. She wanted to be free. So much so that she risked her life to be free. And then she began to understand how to risk her life to free others. I risked my life to be free. Right? Understanding that I had to die. Not a physical death, because I'm still here, but a spiritual death. To begin to connect with who I am and connect with my purpose. So now, when I sit with these emotions, right, I like to say I'm slaying demons. Because emotions, when they're out of control, unchecked, it destroys your life. You can't think properly. You can't focus. You can't move on to the next task because you're stuck. And instead of looking towards some outside entity, go within. Absolutely, positively go within. Confront that emotion so that you can be free. It is a hard thing to do. But I am not telling you to do something that I have not done, that I don't do daily. Because I still get sad. I talked to my girlfriend and told her I was jealous of her, right? That was a hard thing to do because I didn't know what her response was going to be. But that was something that sat with me. Sometimes when you go and you go to a friend's house or a family member, it's something that they have said or done to you. Sometimes it makes you feel some type of way, right? So you can't truly be yourself around them because of some unsaid things. And then, one day they die. And you're like, ooh, I wish I had said what I needed to say. What you need to say to yourself is understanding how you feel about those emotions and that person, and then going to that person in love and saying, man, can I talk to you? What you said the other day or what you did the other day, it was painful. It hurt me. And if people love themselves and they're in a position to say, what I said and what I did hurt this person, would I want that done to me? And if your answer is no, then you understand, right, that what you did was hurtful. And you need to apologize. You need to make it right. You need to make those amendments. And it's a hard thing to do. But I'm doing it. And when I tell you that it is freeing to say I'm sorry, it is freeing to then tell a person that you said that you were sorry to say I love you. You not only free yourself, you free them too. There is no malicious intent. The intent is only to mend, to bridge the gap of the hurt and the pain. I am a disruptor. I am a bridge. I'm coming to bridge gaps of misunderstandings because it's just simply a conversation. I'm here to disrupt the same insane circles that we go through thinking we're going to get a different result, but it's the same thing. You're moving, but you're moving in circle. It is hard to go straight. It is so hard to go straight because of how you want to let your emotions control the narrative in that moment. And so I want to share something that when I first started, when I had my very first psychology class, the professor, she taught act therapy, right? And so I was like, I want to do CBT therapy. I don't want to do act therapy. But now I understand act therapy. And so act therapy is come as you are, right? That's something that, the Bible tells us, right? To come as we are. So act is acceptance, commitment, therapy. And so in psychology, because they have to verify therapies to make sure that it's going to actually help people. So they do research. So and read more research. So it's empirically based, right? Meaning that they have validated this therapy for use on humans. So it is a unique, empirically based psychological intervention that uses acceptance and mindfulness strategies together with commitment and behavior change strategies to increase psychological flexibility. So in a nutshell, that means this whole entire story that I just said, right? Understanding your emotions, sitting with them, being present with them, and being mindful of why you feel that way, right? And addressing that emotion, speaking directly to it. Why are you hurting? Why are you angry, mad, frustrated, sad, depressive, all these things? Sitting with those emotions and asking those tough questions, doing the self-reflective work of how do I respond to this emotion? So ACT therapy teaches people to just notice, accept, and embrace their private events. ACT also emphasizes behaving in ways consistent with valued goals and life direction. Again, right? Accepting who you are. Accepting in this moment that you're sad. Accepting in this moment that you're angry. Accepting in this moment, whatever it is that you're feeling. Again, we don't have problems with the positive emotions. We have a problem with the negative ones. And so what I like to do when I'm looking at therapy and understanding it to apply it to my life, because everybody is different, right? Even this ACT therapy, everybody can't do this. They need, CBT training, which conditions you to rethink about what you do to change your behaviors to get you to do new behaviors. It's all the same to me. But the difference is ACT therapy, while it focuses on your mind, CBT therapy also focuses on your mind, but wants you to physically begin to do something. ACT therapy will do the same thing, but to them there's a difference. So, and it's just my opinion. So with ACT therapy, and changing your mind, there's a scripture in the Bible. My sister brought it up one day when I was talking to her. She says, that, the Bible teaches us to renew our minds. And so it's not just spiritually, it is physical. Because how can you spiritually understand that scripture and not apply it to yourself physically? So renewing of your mind is learning something different from what you know right now. People get, that saying of stuck in your old ways. They cling on to that like it's a life vest. The life vest is learning something new, because then you're not limited to the one thing that you know. Now it's multiple things that you know. And so keeping that in mind, when you decide to do something different and it causes you to say or do something different, keep in mind to not harm yourself or to harm others. That's part of the psychological treatment of the paperwork that we have to fill out when we're doing studies, right? To do no hurt or harm to people. So with that in mind, understand that even changes to yourself should not hurt you. We may understand really clearly not to hurt others, but sometimes we don't understand not to harm ourselves. If overextending yourself is going to harm you, don't do it. That's why it's okay to say no. And how we say no is that we say no in love. Our sister posted a post in the group to tell us how to say no. Because see, I'm not afraid to share this work, right? So that we can all begin to add in. That's the community of this. It's for all of us to stretch and grow and use new information as ways to climb and lift as we climb, right? Because you're lifting as you're climbing. And so if all of us are attached and we're all climbing, then we leave nobody behind. And that's the goal. So ACT therapy is one now that I began to understand that is tied to mindfulness, being present with yourself, understanding that in the moment, right, that when you have those difficult moments, when those emotions get so built up and charred up in you and you cannot sit with yourself, that's when therapy is important. To talk to a therapist, that's when it's important, because at that point you understand that this is bigger than me. I need to talk about this. I need to get this out. I need somebody to help me process what it is that I'm thinking and how it is that I'm feeling, because I want to hurt myself or I want to harm others. That's when you bring in some outside help. I'm gonna say me. I did therapy as a teenager, and so I understood how helpful it was. But then as I got older, I was told that, oh, you don't need therapy, go to church. Okay, it's something new. Haven't tried it. Let's see. And so as I was going to church, it was helping, right? I was beginning to change and renew my mind, because this was something new that I had never done before. Like really immerse myself into learning about God and learning, how to control my emotions through God. So I'm like, oh man, this is great. This is wonderful. But life is kicking my behind. I'm in church. I'm praying. I'm trying to do the right things, but life is just still kicking me. It's kicking me, and it hurts. So I became vulnerable at church. I was like, man, I tried to kill myself. I tried to, take my kids out too, because I felt like if I was gone, nobody gonna take care of them. So everybody gonna go. But what happened was, it was a Mother Powell came in, because everybody was just listening to my story, and we were all crying, right? We were all crying. That was our support group. It was a sisters' night. We had a sleepover. We're gonna do that one day too. Um, and I was like, she came in, touched me. The prayer that prayed, it was great, but it was also like it was powerful, right? It's almost like she stopped me in my tracks, and I was good until another tragedy happened, and then I was back because the prayer temporarily stopped what it was I was going through, but the emotion was still there because I never stopped to face it. So of course it's going to show up again. So this time around was a little better. I began to face these things. And so sitting in these classes, learning about psychology, learning about Black studies and politics, I'm reminded of the Bible, right? And the politics that was in the Bible, and the politics that was in the Bible, and the politics that's in the Bible, and how prophets came to disrupt what the people were experiencing in their own personal lives. They came to disrupt. They came to show you something different. So the Bible, is an ancestral book. It is the foundation of a guide that gets us through life. The stories that are in the Bible are connected with you when you're connected spiritually to God, not religion, because then that's something different. So Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all ye who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I was like, how do you get rest? Right? When you're spiritually burdened, you go to church. How do you get rest when you're naturally burdened? You do all type of things, right? Bubble bath, food, sex, drugs, alcohol. It's all some other form of attachments to get you to deal with your emotions. Now, I'm not saying that those things aren't useful and for you not to do it, because I drink. But what I am saying is that if these are always your go-to moments, right? Even going to church, and you constantly keep having these moments, and you're running to something to solve your problem. That's the problem. Sit with some stuff, because you can go to church all day long and get the information to fix your problem, but if you don't apply it, then you're going in vain, really. It's about application. Psychology studies a question, does an experiment, and then gives you the results of that. Well, at church, you learn the scriptures. You're supposed to apply the scriptures and then give a result, your testimony. But if you're not going through those steps, then you don't get to the end. You stay stuck. Just like in politics, if we don't participate in it, we get stuck. We get stuck with somebody else who don't really care about our lives and what it is that we go through. Stay in office for 30 and 40 years because we don't understand politics. We don't understand that these things govern our life. Just like we live by the Bible and we take those scriptures. Same thing with the politics. They take those laws and legislations that they come up with, and the difference is you have a choice with church, right? Whether you go or not, whether you apply or not, right? That's your choice. That's your free will. But in the world, you don't have a choice. Whatever laws that they pass, legislation that they pass, you have to abide by it no matter what. Because you live here. They had laws for slavery. They had laws for Jim Crow. It was on the books, right? They destroyed our communities. And they're still destroying our communities because we won't unlearn all the wrong things that this society taught us. It challenges you. It challenges the things that you think are normal. It is easy for somebody to believe lies because they don't want to face the truth. Because the truth, although is necessary, sometimes it's painful to face it. But face it no matter what, because the end goal is your freedom. We're still trying to free people. And it's a freedom from being used until it's time for you to retire from a job. That's still slavery. You work a job until you're 68 before you're able to, they got early retirement now at 65, and the idea of, we got all these new technologies and all these new different things to sustain your life. You can live to 100. But how much can you do? Your body starts to break down. So they've used all of your youth working within a system that still keeps you enslaved. That's another topic too. But all these systems work together. And so to disrupt what I'm doing is to share the information, give testimonies, and participate in the political system. That's what governs my life. And those are the things that I participate in. And that's how I'm able to look at situations and say, well, I see this point, but can I also see and view a different point? Because that's how we kind of, keep each other balanced. But if these are skills that aren't taught to us, we don't know how to do them. And they're not taught to us. So that's why I have been purposed to teach. Because I did want to be a teacher. I did. Start off going to school for it. I do want to understand, and help people. Psychology. I do want to kind of create programs, that'll be beneficial for the community, political. And so, what do you do with somebody like me? I'm still trying to figure it out. But I just keep moving. And no matter where this takes me, where I land, how much money I'm going to have, and I'm not worried about any of that. Because the gift that was given to me was free. I started this conversation off with talking about the freedom of freeing your mind and thinking differently. Being different from who you were on yesterday. It's a thing, people. It's a thing, sisters. I grow daily. I really, really do grow daily. It is not an exaggeration. Because being in school, whenever I read something new that I've never seen before, and professor asks me to give them, my thoughts and my reactions, I read it to understand it, then to apply it. How would I feel in this moment if I was faced with this situation? Now, the Black Studies Department, they give me a lot of freedom to talk just like I'm talking right now. But in psychology, because it's so whitewashed and so entangled into focusing on one group of people, that my way of thinking, right, is told that it's wrong. But No matter what they say, I still challenge. I'm able to sit at the table. I'm able to have conversations with them that a lot of students can agree with, because that's their own personal experiences. And it don't matter what color you are. By UIC being a public university, a lot of the students that go there, they come from working class families. And so they understand. They're not out of touch with reality. And so every now and again, we'll get somebody in with some money. And how do you change somebody with some money? You just tell them your story. You don't attack them and their money, because they're going to protect that. But what they can't protect against is your voice. They can't protect against your story, your own personal testimony of what a capitalist system, a racist system built on somebody's color being better than the other one, that somehow you don't deserve to be treated like a human being. I tell stories. That's how I speak. That's what's gotten me to where I am, by standing up in front of people. Again, the training happened, my training happened, before I started going to school. It started at church. And being able to stand before people that I didn't know a lot of, but I just wanted to share my story. I've been set apart already and had a purpose since I was born. And this is it. This is my purpose, to use my voice, not just to free myself, but to free others, and to continue learning, and to continue understanding, so that I never get to a point where I don't understand what it's like to not have something, and then to understand what it's like to have something. And the idea of sharing and building a community. Because the heaven on earth that we're seeking and what we're looking for is loving our brothers and sisters. That's it. It's as simple as that. But all of the divisiveness that's in this world is perpetrated by government and corporations to keep us fighting one another. And I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting people. I'm tired of being angry at people. I understand now that my anger has a destination, and it is not my next door neighbor, unless my next door neighbor is trying to hurt me. That's the only way they're your enemy. If you participate in a political system that's hurting, you're an enemy. If you're participating to physically harm me, you're an enemy. But if those are not your intentions, and it is not what you do, I don't care what color you are, you're not my enemy. I have been refocused and retrained to understand who to fight. And that's why I can tell people that I love you. I love each and every one of you. I think I done took up most of y'all time, because it's going to be long when y'all watch it again. If y'all watch it. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to one of my many testimonies. And if there is anything, and I do mean anything, that you all ever want to discuss, and do like a group meeting or a one-on-one, right? Let me know, because this is something that is needed, right? To be heard, to be loved, and to be understood. And that's what we're here for. That's why I created this community. I will be adding more people as the Spirit leads me to do it. I think I got like close to 800 friends, and I want all 800 of them in this group. But just like, you have to understand discernment, when to bring people in and when to have them. They still have to wait, right? Because they're still going through what I posted earlier, right? They're still going through their training, right? It's not punishment, the trials that we go through. It is preparation. So the trials that I went through in my life brought me to this moment of preparation, brought me to this moment of where I can speak love and truly, truly mean it. That's where I am right now. Because before, the love that I had was superficial. It was the love based on what the world taught me, and not love based on what God teaches. Right? And so I leave you all with, I love you. I want to see us grow. I want to see us flourish. I do not want to see us hate or tear one another down. That is not ever, ever, ever my goal. And since I am speaking this and I am telling you this, the day I step out of line, you are a sister to me, to pull me to the side in love and say, Yvonne, this is not who you are. You are not hate. You are not jealousy. You are not malicious. You are not hurtful. You are not trying to harm anyone. You can say that to me, and I will hear you, because I always want to understand that I am not to harm myself, and I am not to harm you. Until next time, ladies, bye.